Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 5 of The Army Nerd. Today we're going to be talking about cheating in Warhammer 40,000. As many of you are probably aware, recently there was a cheating scandal with one of the top Chaos players in the ITC. TJ Lanigan, one of the top players, was playing Chaos at a tournament, and he was caught on live stream cheating. So we're going to go through what the ITC said, go through his own statements, and then just talk in general about what cheating in 40K means and how it affects the community going forward. So first we'll start with the actual statement from the ITC. For those of you who don't know, the ITC stands for Independent Tournament Circuit, and it's run by Frontline Gaming. They basically track the data from various tournaments across the world. I believe that the standard is it has to be a minimum of 1,000-point tournament with a certain number of players. Basically the ones that generate some of the ranks, and then at the end of the season at the Las Vegas Open, it's kind of like where they end up their season. So the official statement from the ITC is, an attendee at the Fabricator Forge April Grand Tournament was filmed conducting themselves in a manner violating the rules of Warhammer 40,000 and the ITC Code of Conduct. In addition to the video evidence of this misconduct, these actions were confirmed by the event's tournament organizers. Upon discussing with the tournament organizers, review of the video, and discussion amongst the community of ITC tournament organizers, administrative action was taken. In addition to the actions taken by the event organizer and the regional coalition of event organizers, the player in question's ITC points for the season to date have been removed, and they will receive no score for any event they play in the rest of the 2021 season. Any ITC participating event organizers are free to admit this player to their events or not at their discretion, but the player in question will gain no ITC points from said events. Incidents of misconduct damage the reputation of the individual, the event they attend, and the community of organized play enthusiasts as a whole. This behavior will not be tolerated, and similar incidents will meet similar consequences. So let's talk about what this means. Essentially, this player is banned from the rest of the ITC tournament circuit for the rest of the year, up until January 2022. That's good because this is the first time we've seen an actual ban of a player. And you read the fine print, he can still attend tournaments if the organizers allow him, but he will not be participating in the ITC rankings. This is a really good step. I know that the ITC and Frontline Gaming don't want to become the referees of the world as far as Warhammer 40K, but honestly, discouraging cheating is an important thing that the community as a whole has to do, and the fact that they're stepping up and doing this is really important. So let's look at the statement from TJ Lanovin we have from the Spiky Bits website. So Spiky Bits offered to give the guy a chance to talk back, and he said, "Hello everyone, I wanted to address the events that happened last weekend at the Fabricators Forge GT. First, I would like to say that I take full responsibility for my actions at the event. Anything that is not allowed in the game or even frowned upon is cheating, and I cheated in this event." He goes on to say that he is sorry, he disrespected the event, yada yada yada. But at least he's admitting it, right? He's coming out and he's admitting that he cheated. It doesn't make what he did okay. He says that he's ashamed of his actions, and he should be, right? I think some people who take the competitive scene a little too far get caught up in there's lots of reasons. It could be you get caught up in the unfairness of the dice rolls at times, right? Maybe the guy was just thinking he was giving himself odds on the dice, and in the end, that's how it should work out. But that's not how the game's played, and it hurts the community as a whole. For those of you who don't know exactly what happened, you can go on YouTube and various sites and find the video that show him playing. But essentially, in one of the games at the Fabricator Forge GT, there was an overhead streaming camera, and you can see TJ throwing dice behind a large piece of terrain so that his opponent really couldn't get eyes on the dice. You see him shooting a number of shots for certain weapons, even though he rolled a lower number of shots. You see him ignoring wounds when he did not roll any dice to ignore the wounds. Specifically, he didn't roll any sixes for his poxwalkers. And there's also claims that he miscounted the number of wounds taken on a Plague Burst Crawler, thus giving him an advantage by maintaining that asset throughout the game. So these scandals hurt everybody in the community, and specifically, I saw a video talking about why they hate competitive 40K, and this is very representative of what 40K competitive players are like, and that's just not true. Every tournament that I've gone to has had amazing players, and of course, we highlight the bad apples and we highlight when things like this happen. But overall, some of the best players in the world are also some of the best opponents in the world, and you have a great time playing with them. Um, and why I think overall I would classify myself as a casual player, right? I'm in it more for the story. I'm in it more for having a good time and playing realistic looking armies. I'm not trying to spam the most effective units. Uh, but where tournament play and competitive 40K helps the hobby grow is the more popular it gets and the bigger these tournaments get, it's just another way to introduce people into the hobby. And whether you're, more of a painter, more of a modeler, more of a player, it doesn't matter. We're all kind of bonded together by our shared enjoyment of the hobby. And some people want to play competitive, and that's great, and some people don't. That's also great. But at the end of the day, when the competitive scene is strong, it builds the hobby out and it brings more people in, and everybody wins from that. But we have to police ourselves and not allow cheaters and things of that nature to really permeate and dissuade the community from growing, which is really the unfortunate thing that happens sometimes. So that's enough talking about that. I'm sure if people haven't seen the video, you guys can find it. It's unfortunate. We learn from it and we move on. I want to talk about cheating in general. We've all played games where you've forgotten a rule or you misremembered something from your book, right? That's not cheating. So when you're playing a game, especially with somebody who you don't know very well, there's really two big things you got to do in order to ensure that there's no bad taste in anybody's mouth. Nobody walks away from that game feeling cheated, and that's one is over communicate, and two is be humble, right? You want to over communicate everything you're doing to your opponent. You don't want to win with a got you or a misremembered rule, right? So you want to constantly talk to your opponent and let them know, like, hey, this is what I'm doing. Now, I'm not saying you got to give them your battle plans, right? I'm not saying that you got to give up every tactic that you know. But a good practice is when you first show up to the table, walk your opponent through your list and walk them not just through like, hey, these are the units in my list. Walk them through their abilities. Walk them through some of the abilities that really change the rules of the game. A perfect example of this is Auspex Scan for Space Marines. If you're playing against a new player who doesn't really understand that is a thing, and they're going to be halfway through the game, drop a unit out of Deep Strike right next to a unit of Flamestorm aggressors and then just get melted. It makes no sense. There's a real delicate balance between revealing all the tricks that you have up your sleeve and playing an honest game. And I would say that, and especially in game, sometimes if your opponent makes a move that is obviously zero benefit for them, I would give them a little reminder like, hey, you sure you want to drop those 5 Scourge right next to my unit of 6 Flamestorm aggressors? Like, they're going to be able to shoot and just immediately murder them. And maybe he's trying to get you to burn a command point. Maybe he's trying to get you to do something, and there's a purpose for there. Or he's hoping, hey, they're going to roll well on their saves and they're going to win me a lot of points. But having that conversation, really over communicating to your opponent, is critical in every game. And just so that you're both, have a good experience. You come away from that knowing not only having played a good game, but you also learn a lot more that way, and it helps you with your own rules. That's what I've found. I always remind my opponent, like, hey, my squad of assault intercessors, they can fight twice. Don't forget that. Hey, my squad of regular intercessors, they can shoot twice. Don't forget that. Hey, I've got Auspex Scan. Don't forget that. And saying those rules not only helps me remember so I don't forget when I want to use my stratagems, but it gives them a good feeling and an understanding of like, hey, we're both here to play and try to beat each other, but we're trying to do it in the most fair way possible. And at the end of the day, you're going to let the dice and your own skill decide, not, my opponent forgot that I can Auspex Scan, so I killed a critical unit. That's not the way you want to win. And being humble is that if someone asks you for you to check a rule, don't get offended, right? If somebody wants to see something in the book, be more than willing to bring it out. And maybe you did forget. Sometimes there's so many rules in this game, and sometimes things are changing, and there's different FAQs and all kinds of things. You got to be humble when someone's asking you to like double check something, and don't be that guy that's like, hey, what, you don't trust me? You think I don't know my army? No, pull it up and pull up the official documentation, not just the battle scribe or your own handwritten notes and things like that. I print out small cards that have all my abilities on them, but I always have my codex with me as well. So I use my quick reference cards that I designed because it's just faster, it's easier, it helps me, memorize the rules faster. But I always have my codex, and I'm more than happy to show it to my opponent and offer it to them, right? Don't just wait for them to. If you can kind of tell, like, hey, they kind of are iffy about something, be like, hey man, you want me to show it to you in the book? I'll pull it up right now, and then pull it up, offer it to them, and they're going to be appreciative of that. And it's just a good thing for for everybody going forward. Understanding how to communicate with their opponents and really just not wanting to cheat anybody out of anything or come away from the table with a bad feeling. The last thing I want to talk about is playing with intent. Playing with intent is a big thing that I do, and a lot of players do, and I think honestly it's the right way to do it. I heard a really good quote one day was Warhammer 40K is not a precise game. As much as we want to be measuring with exactness and accuracy, like at the end of the day, it's not a precise game, right? You're moving models on a table, you're using a measuring tape, but the more you try to be perfect and exact with it, the more time you're eating up, the more it can become a drag. It can slow down the gameplay, and it can honestly like take some of the fun away. Now, I'm not saying you just throw your models across the table and you're like, yeah, that's about 6 inches, and you move them 10 inches. What I'm saying is understanding that with the fact that 40K isn't the most precise game, speaking about what your intentions are, and I'll give you a perfect example. I'll put a unit of intercessors down on the table, and I'll say, hey, these guys are within 30 inches of this first row of poxwalkers. That's where I want to deploy them. And then your opponent, and you can look at it and be like, yeah, I can see that's where they are. Or dropping down, hey, I am deep striking this unit. My intent is for it to be, within 3 inches of this objective, but more than 12 inches away from your aggressors, so that you can't auspex scan me. And then, maybe it's a tricky positioning based on the size of the models and all that. But if you and your opponent look at the map and look at the forces, and you realize what the intent is, and you both agree, hey, yeah, I think that's definitely possible, and you get it, good enough, that's enough. That's enough for me, man. Like, if we're at this game and we're precisely measuring every single piece of movement, it's going to take way longer than it needs to, and at the end of the day, it's only going to matter in some niche cases. Whereas when you play with intent and you're like, hey, this is my intent, and you both look at the board and you agree, yeah, absolutely, you can do that. I agree with that. Then you're showing good faith to each other, and you're speeding up the game, and it stops you from when you don't communicate with your opponent. Going back to communicating, when your intent is to drop them outside of 12 and within 3 of an objective, and then you drop them, and then your opponent auspex scans you, and you didn't say anything, right? And they are within 12. Your opponent's completely right in taking the auspex scan and shooting them up, or whatever the stratagem or niche ability is. They're correct, and it can leave a bad taste in someone's mouth if they spring a trap on you and you're like, oh no, but I meant for you to not be able to do that. Well, I've already done it, and now it seems like you're just doing it because I did it, and maybe you didn't know about it, or you weren't thinking properly. And those are the types of situations you want to avoid. So I think it's good that we as a community look at these events of cheating and realize that we're all humans, we all make mistakes, but when it's very deliberate and things like that, it's harming to the community and something we should avoid. I think we need to over communicate with our opponents, and you can clearly tell the difference between someone who is trying to play a game of intent and be honest and open with their opponent versus someone who's just trying to win at all costs. And it definitely leaves a different taste in people's mouths. And at the end of the day, we want to do everything we can to increase the size of the hobby and have good games. So thanks for joining me, everybody. I appreciate all the support. Remember, if you want to support the channel, there is a Amazon Associates link in the description below. Check out the podcasts and the YouTube videos. We also have a Discord, so the link to the Discord will be in the description below. Go on to Discord, join up, sign up. Now, we'd love to hear from you. If anybody has any video suggestions that they want to hear, just let us know. Hit us up in the Discord, and we'll catch you all next time.
Thanks, this is Army Nerd. We are RTV time now.